backyard concession a little bit. It's like.
Next time you see him, tell him I said hi.
How you doing, Greg?
Good, how are you doing? It's almost feel like.
Oh, it's okay. No, I talked to Ken about it briefly. We had a bit of question regarding the traffic closure on Union. Would it be permissible to close that during the workday?
I guess I don't need that.
For paving projects, sorry.
Oh, it's not the whole
No, I
package?
think
Is Ian on the
Oh,
phone?
okay.
No, I was a bidder asking.
Well, I guess,
It would
she
be
was.
permissible.
No, he wasn't sure if he could, so.
Like during construction. I talked to Ken about it briefly. He was kind of.
Yeah,
As far as I know, we don't have one more surgery.
No, this is my.
It might come up
Yeah.
during your report today.
I'll easy up online, I guess.
Oh,
We
well,
okay?
can I have that
Yep.
one?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Or do you need
Jim.
one?
No, I just gotta get the why.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the May 18th, 2022 Middletown Borough Council meeting to order. Please all rise and pledge allegiance to the flag, followed by a moment of silence. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Here.
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 Here. Okay. I would like to report that an executive session was held May 4th, 2022, to discuss personnel and potential litigation. It resulted in no action being taken. I'd like to open the floor for public comment on agenda items.
Jack Still, Middletown. I'd like to thank you all for putting the draft version of the packet onto the webpage so people can look through it. I know it's probably not 100% of everything, but it's 99% more than we had in the past. So the packet that most of what you all have is on the webpage now. I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Still. Seeing no more public comment, agenda item number 1, approval of minutes.
Do I have a motion to approve council meeting minutes for the May 3rd, 2022 meeting as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Councilor Kliskevich, a second from Councilor Seitz. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 2, approval of bills.
Do I have a motion to approve payment of bills as shown on the accounts payable list dated May 12th, 2022, which is for the period of April 29th, 2022 through May 13th, 2022, and to ratify approval of such bills already paid and to authorize the appropriate officials to take the required actions to make said payments.
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Councilor Kliskevich, a second from Councilor Miller. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 3,
We,
293 East Main Street, stormwater submittal. Mr. Obenstein?
Yes.
Good evening.
Clarify with Josh, is this, it says stormwater submittal, this is actually a land development plan?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. In front of it, it's Wi-Fi 17057.
Do you need this?
I believe we had a few questions, if we may.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues that we've kind of stumbled into today and we're trying to understand is the use zoning. So the application, or at least the plan, sounds like it's a replacement of a storage building that had burned down. But what we're understanding now is it actually was a bar.
It was, yeah, it was Demp's Corner Bar prior.
Okay.
Yep.
And there, so the problem is that in that zoning district, you can't have a primary use storage building.
So, just so I understand, am I here as part of a planning committee or because you don't have that
Yeah,
or?
so we don't have a planning committee, so
Correct.
that's why we're
Oh.
trying to understand.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
So,
and there won't be action tonight. This is really just to decide to put it on the agenda for
for council,
council for next
Sure.
meeting.
okay.
But when we're looking at so the application seems to be talking about storage buildings.
So, yeah, so I want to just elaborate on that if I may. The intent is to build a building that is going to be used for primary owner occupant use, to store some equipment, vending machines, miscellaneous tools, things of that nature for that business with an office being in front. There's not going to be any customers coming. There's not going to be any tractor trailers making deliveries. It's primary owner occupant use. And the primary portion of that is just to store some equipment, park a vehicle inside the building. Not a storage unit in the sense of people renting out storage lockers, moving in and out, people coming and going, turning it into a car shop as a storage unit. We just had to put something on the application to explain the use. So I hope that kind of clears up the,
It still does, so I don't know if you looked at the zoning ordinance, but there'll be a list of here are the things you can do,
sure,
and you really need to look at that.
sure.
I mean, it's kind of, so it's kind of funny, we're talking about land development, so that's mostly physical, how big's the building, how's the
Yep.
stormwater? But in the end, you know, it's because you're saying on here,
So,
that concept,
yep, so it was my understanding, I was here strictly for stormwater. Like I was told that portion is down the road to further delve into the details. So the last year, we were in front of the planning commission, we got a waiver for stormwater, came in front of council, it was kicked back because of stormwater. So we reapplied for stormwater with the borough recommendations to meet the mandates, and it was my understanding that then would come further down the road.
yeah, and it
for
can, I guess
discussion.
we want to make sure we're on the same page with that, where
Sure,
we're
sure.
understanding what are, you know,
Yeah, we're
and
looking,
are you aware there's that's
yeah,
a use issue?
yeah, we're looking for,
Still needs
yeah,
to be
we
dealt
just,
with.
we need to get approval for stormwater in the building. We're looking to comply with what's in that area. We're not looking to put another bar up or something that doesn't, you know, turning it into a residence. We're looking to conform to the zoning in that particular area.
All right, so, but your understanding then, we're looking at the physical stormwater, the setbacks, all those kinds of things?
That was my understanding. I was here strictly for that tonight.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So maybe I misunderstood.
No, no, you
Apologize.
didn't necessarily, I guess we're looking and seeing this use issue kind of popping up and saying, you know, and it would be different, let's say there had been historically a storage building there and that burned down and you're
Sure.
quick replacing it, it's, you know, that's,
Yeah, as much as
Different thing.
everybody loved Demp's Corner Bar, we're not looking to burden the community, that local area with traffic and customers and cars and things of that nature. We're just looking to put a building up to improve that corner, which is on the main road through the borough, and use it for our own personal use.
okay. So, but you're aware that you are gonna have to figure out the
Mhm.
use and compliance and.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Correct.
Then Jim, Mr. Diamond, I have a question. Then what would we be voting on next meeting if we move this to the next
So
meeting?
we'd really be looking at the land development plan and all the aspects of the land development plan and being clear that we're not approving, you know, obviously you can't pull a building permit until you've dealt with all the zoning
Right.
issues.
So when Mr. Obenstein says we're dealing with that down the road, the down the road is the next meeting?
No, no, no. So down the road is, he would have to file a zoning application with the zoning officer saying, here's what I plan to do. And it
Mm-hmm.
either gets approved or denied, you know, and if it gets denied, then he appeals it or asks, you know, appeal and or variance request kind of thing. But, so, and I guess it's important that we're not confusing the two, so no one thinks we're approving the use and this
Right.
thing can actually be built.
Mhm.
So, you know, I think long as we have it in the right context, of we're looking at these physical things
Right.
for the next, and the other thing, we do have to check dates, because under the MPC, although we don't have a quorum right now for our planning commission, comply with the statute, we do have to have at least 30 days from when that application came in and was made available to the planning commission, and when we make a decision. And, you know, obviously, if somebody steps up, you know, the planning commission, we quick have a meeting, and that is what it is, but we theoretically, it's not right. And we may already be past 30 days, I'm not real familiar with the timing on this, but I think by the next meeting, you know, we could have it all, if council's inclined to, you could put it on the agenda for your next meeting to consider, you know, and even in consideration, if, and more give and take, if you have any questions, you could always table it, unless we're up against the deemed approval. We'll have to check with Rob Moyer on that. But it would make sense to put it on, like, my concern looking at this was, you know, hearing that the history was a bar that burned down, that there wasn't, you know, confusion by everybody that we're looking at the permissible use.
Right.
I mean, if you want a bar, we can have that discussion, you know, but that's not something I wanted to do.
You haven't received any permits of any kind yet, then, have you?
No, so we haven't made it that far. So, you know, we were last year about this time, went to the planning commission, got in front of council, and it was promptly shot down because of stormwater.
Right.
And at that time, we were told in order to do stormwater to meet the requirements, we had to shrink the building size down. And that kind of took us back to the drawing board, and we spent the last year trying to decide what we could do, what was feasible, and we were able to make it work, you know, working with your engineer to meet the requirements.
But stormwater is separate from zoning. That's a separate ordinance from zoning ordinance. Have you had any discussions with anybody how you meet the zoning requirements for what type of operation you want to run there, what type of structure you want to build?
Yes, I was under the impression that I got to get the stormwater approved before I can even have a conversation about zoning. If I can do those at the same time, that would be great to expedite it, because I feel like we're at a snail's pace here.
Gotcha.
But if that's the requirement, if you want me to do a zoning application tomorrow, we'll do it, or a formal application. But I was under the
Yeah,
impression.
that's kind of at your discretion. I mean, you can be running them simultaneously, or you
Sure.
may, you know, a lot of times you do look at, you know, can I physically build something in this shape? And
Yeah, I mean, the list of permitted uses, you know, I forget what all was in there. I think there was, you know, salon was in there and different things. And we've had various people approach us about leasing space, but we haven't had any serious conversations because we felt like we couldn't commit to that without knowing if we're past the stormwater, if we can, you know, get a permission to put a structure up. But the original use was primary, have an office in the front, and as part of running the business, have storage in the back for our own personal use. Maybe we went too far in the explanation of what we're trying to do, but
No, it doesn't.
we're trying to be transparent.
It's really
you know.
just making sure there's no confusion, either council or on
So I
your
guess,
part.
just so I'm clear, it would not be permitted for me to store equipment, inventory. That's not a permitted use in that district.
Yeah, so if you had a retail store and that's the stock room, and that's part of the retail store, and I'm not even saying for sure retail.
Yeah, I'm just having a conversation. I'm not looking to hold it.
But
'Cause-
assuming that were the case, that's one integrated thing. You know, if it's an office, if that's presumably the use, you wouldn't be storing big things for an office. I mean, you might have printer, you know, paper or
Sure.
something like that, but, so, you know, it really will come down to what's the real use. So
Yeah.
if you were, you know, a construction contractor and you're storing equipment in there, that may not be
Permitted.
permitted, you know. And again, that's, you gotta, there will be a list of permitted uses,
Mm-hmm.
and then another kind of allowable use, although I don't think there are too many that would matter here, like hotels and things, or special exceptions, and that's generally allowable as long as you can show certain things.
Sure.
And beyond that, you know, you're usually in the prohibited territory unless you have a grandfathered use.
Mhm.
And here, since it was a bar, you know, if you're not duplicating what was there before. In fact, even that probably wouldn't be grandfathered
I think we'd be past.
because it was probably permitted use at the time.
Yeah,
And in fact, now it wouldn't be because a tavern is a permitted use,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody could build one there, as long as they can make the stormwater and those kinds of things.
Mhm.
Um,
so we're throwing a lot out. You said tavern is permitted?
Yes,
Still?
I'm
Okay.
pretty sure, again, have to look at the
Yeah,
list,
and the only reason I asked
but
it,
I'm
because,
pretty sure it is.
yeah, the reason I asked, I felt like we're really in the weeds with the business operation, where we're storing things and where we're not. So I want to, trying to fully understand where you guys are coming from.
Mr. Obenstein, because we've had 2 resignations from the planning board,
Mm-hmm.
the council is operating in that function.
Understood?
And so we will be referring to Borough Ordinance 260-83.
Okay,
And that will be the list of permitted uses for a C2 zone,
okay,
around which we will be then discussing your zoning request.
Well,
Okay.
no, this isn't a zoning request, so.
He has to make one, though.
Yeah, we have not to, so that
Not
goes
to
to
planning
the
commission.
zoning officer, and if he doesn't like what the zoning officer says, it doesn't come here, that
Oh.
goes to the zoning hearing board, whole different track.
yeah,
And that's why I guess, now, for your information, decision-making though, obviously you wouldn't wanna build a building that
Isn't
physically only
permitted.
works for, like, say you build a church and like, no churches here.
sure,
It wouldn't make sense, in fact, you wouldn't really get past the building permit. So, in the end, the building permit only gets issued after you get over every one of these hurdles.
correct, Yeah.
And yeah, it is up to you, the sequence of how you wanna do it.
sure. Yeah, and I guess,
This is certainly permissible to look at. I just didn't, when I was looking at this, I was confused, because I thought this was a replacement of a grandfathered use, and now I'm saying it isn't.
no,
And-
no, and last year at the planning commission, we didn't even talk anything about use. It was strictly what was here prior, what are we looking to do? They gave us a waiver, and then it went in front of council, and then it got,
Okay, it doesn't sound like
So-
there's any confusion on you. I was concerned, were you thinking you're getting approval that, okay.
No.
Go.
No, I'm just looking to get approval that our stormwater, that was my understanding, that our stormwater plan presented to you guys was acceptable. And then I guess, I don't know if you guys were gonna vote on it tonight or go to another council meeting to
Yeah,
approve
so
the
tonight
stormwater.
is what's called a workshop meeting. So actions generally this is really decide what's gonna get on the agenda for 2 weeks from now for the real action meeting. And does
Okay,
it
so we're
make
having a
sense?
meeting to having a meeting, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
so-
just trying to follow the plan here, the sequence.
But, part of it, as we were kind of huddling up here trying to understand was, what is your thought? Are you thinking we're about to address what would
Yeah,
actually
so-
answer the zoning thing and it would not? But
So-
you do understand that, I guess.
Yes, I was here for the official last planning meeting, commission meeting, where the resignation.
Official.
Well, yeah, I guess it was, yeah, it started out, well, it didn't start out as official, but I was told I had to formally apply, which I did then,
Yes.
and now I'm here, but it sounds like I'm still
No, it sounds
not,
like you're understanding the process and you're doing all the right things.
okay.
Again,
think
we're
essentially
in
this
a
is your-
role
this
right
is your
now, we're
planning
moving
commission.
not
That
even-
didn't
I
happen.
thought that, but I'm not feeling, this is the planning commission, I just feel like I'm more confused now.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there are 2 things you gotta determine. Zoning, you gotta determine whether you can fit into the zoning. And
correct,
lots of times, I think people will do that before they go through planning, because why spend money on planning if what you want to do isn't going to be permissible on that zone in town?
so
So you
until,
work that out. So when I looked at, I'm not a zoning officer, but when I looked at, the planning commission stuff, and I saw a use of storage as a possible primary use, that may not be permitted in that zoning district.
yeah, so tonight is the first night I'm hearing that our intended use, because we had lots of conversations. Office in the front, store inventory in the back with equipment, fully enclosed, nothing hanging outside, nothing looking ugly. Tonight's the first night I'm hearing that wouldn't be
It may be an issue,
correct.
yeah.
So I also now have to go back to the drawing board and revisit, how we properly apply and being totally transparent. We're not looking to say, oh, we're gonna call it an office now when I'm gonna store stuff in there, so.
Yeah, Rob Moyer, our zoning officer, in the back of the room there, I know you've met him, he can help you with that too, as far as
Okay,
guidance on
okay,
what uses are permitted and
Sure,
you know. But,
yes,
you know, I
Yeah,
just don't want you
and
to be
practical
confused
matter,
that an approval
yeah.
of a stormwater
Is approval.
design for that size footprint can be deemed as approved for that size footprint of what you're building, but the use is a different issue. That
Correct.
goes before
Yeah.
zoning,
yeah, so.
not planning.
So just so I'm clear, we were approved for a footprint of whatever it was, let's say 1,000 square feet. I can then morph my use to fit into that building, but I needed to make sure I can build a building, stormwater's, acceptable to you guys. And, correct me if I'm wrong, I could build a building and then lease it to a tenant if we wanted to, that fits in the permitted use,
That's right.
Yeah.
whether it be a church, a tavern,
That's right.
but,
Now, you do have to, it is a weird, juncture there of, if you made some kind of use, it might be, I'm making up something, but, if you were gonna do a bank with a drive-through, all of
Yep.
a sudden, yeah, you were able to fit that building in, but now,
sure,
that changes now,
yeah,
something else. And
understood.
that's obviously a
Yep,
very exaggerated example,
Correct.
but,
yeah,
so there is some virtue to, even at least informally talking to the zoning officer about
Absolutely.
concepts. But you're right, when you're looking at how much can I fill into this lot,
Mhm.
you can approach it the way you're approaching it. I'm dealing with the stormwater's a big issue for me,
Yep.
I gotta understand that,
yep.
and this
And-
much space and.
And I'm sure you guys, it's it's a unique situation with the lot, so we wanted to make sure we could get over some of these big hurdles before we really dive into the details of
Okay.
what's going up, what's going in. And I know it's a risk on our part, paying the engineering fees and different things, but at the same time, it needs to be done, whether it's now or whether there's no sense in getting the zoning approved if we can't get stormwater approved or get a permitted size for a building. So that's kind of why we've also done it this way as well.
Does anybody have questions? At least I think we're clear on
We,
how, the limitations of what is on the table right now versus,
Yeah, and if it were non-permitted use, we'd have to apply for a variance and,
right?
or, go that route, which we're not looking
Not, and
for.
I will
to do.
tell you, we generally oppose use variance.
Well, that's good to know, yeah,
A use variance is a very big deal. A dimensional variance, like moving
Setbacks.
lot lines around,
Yep.
or setbacks, that's kind of a different, when it's a use, it kind of goes to the heart of the whole planning concept of here's what kind of fits together in this part of town, what the vision is.
hmm
And you're always gonna have grandfathered things of like, well, there is a
Sure.
gas station right there,
Sure.
whatever it is. But,
Yep.
So, it's not as easy to get a use variance in Pennsylvania as it is to get a dimensional variance or,
Sure.
things like that. So
Okay,
just because I do encounter a lot where folks think, "Oh, I'll just get a variant,
Sure.
like, it's just another step I have to take, and that's
well, we will
not an
gladly
automatic thing for use.
look at 26083 and try to make a permitted use fit into that. building.
83 and 84, so 84 would be. the
Oh,
special
84 as well,
exception,
okay.
but I don't think there's gonna be anything relevant to you in 84, but that's your call.
So,
okay, so we'll put the,
And if it's on the agenda, if that's what's decided, you can put a presentation on, you can have, engineers, attorney, whatever you want, or not, or just do what you're doing now, or, maybe all the questions have been answered, and you just be, looking at the recommendations to the county planning commission, obviously, they review it.
mhm.
We don't have a local one right now. That will, even
Sure.
if one popped up now, I don't know that it would make sense to advertise a meeting for it and everything. It probably makes sense to just proceed forward. There's engineering comments and all those things.
So for now, at our next meeting, when we put items up for voting, we'll be looking at the stormwater submittal.
Well,
Okay.
actually, we gotta be clear, it's the land development, and that includes stormwater. So it actually, the agenda would, I know here it says stormwater submittal, but we really would be, we'll take the title of the plan, whatever it is here.
So just so I
Final
understand,
land development plan for,
the way it's listed as storage, you guys don't like, I should update that to figure out a use between now and the next meeting?
no, you don't have to,
Okay.
that's, I just
Okay.
wanted to make it clear, and but you already fully understood.
Yeah,
That's a separate track, that's not being
Okay.
addressed.
okay,
And, you know, there's always the danger of confusion if you don't do this regularly, and maybe you do, but.
I don't. That's why I'm
Say,
here.
where someone could think, oh, I was already approved now to do, you know, like say you put car wash in.
Sure.
And we're looking at stormwater all around this shape and driveways and things like
Mhm.
that. It doesn't mean you could do a car wash.
Yep.
Maybe you can, maybe you can't, you know, when you go down the zoning road, but
Sure.
we're not looking at that, we're not
So,
making.
Jim, this is
decisions on
kind
it.
of unique for me as well. So if you approve the land development plan next council meeting, and he can't do a storage facility or office as he calls it, is he able to come in and put a bar in that same footprint without submitting a new land development plan?
So,
Tavern.
maybe
Tavern.
not, and that's, I guess what I'm saying is.
I guess if he can fit it in that footprint, does
Yes,
he need
and there's no other requirement, so.
parking?
Things
stuff?
change, like, let's say, all of a
Yeah.
sudden, oh, I need to have a fire escape, and the building was gonna go into that, now you got a different building footprint.
Yeah.
You know, so all those things, it does, you may decide to formally pursue things, but it does make sense to kind of vet what can I really put in there, and does the shape even make sense?
Mhm.
I mean, and now you know, or you have a good idea, you know, from what do you think's gonna work stormwater wise.
Mhm.
But, you know, so it's up to you how you wanna proceed with it. But, I mean, right now, this is on track, it's a formal application, unless
Correct.
you said, I wanna put it on hold, we are gonna proceed at, you know, if it weren't the next meeting, some, you know,
So
fairly near time.
It's like I'm beating a drum. So I understand this. What do I need to do to get on the next council meeting to have this looked at for stormwater approval, if anything?
So that's up to, if council wants to put it on tonight, they'll just, it'll be on, you'll be,
Okay.
in fact, if you sit here, you'll hear.
I mean, is there something that's preventing it from going on that I'm missing, or?
It's only the vote, the council
Discussion
determines
here.
what goes on the
Okay.
agenda. So timing wise, it wouldn't necessarily have to go that quickly, but it can if
Okay.
we don't think there's any more relevant information that,
Is there
and
anything-
it could even be tabled, you know, if questions come up next time. But at least right now,
I mean, is there maybe other questions I could answer that anybody may have?
yeah, and I don't know that anybody's looked too deeply at it. Like I said,
Okay.
to me, just today,
Sure.
it was the first time I understood there might be a use issue, and that it, you know, wasn't a storage building that, you know, recently burned down or something like that.
Fortunately not.
But, so,
I think I just looked at it on that Route 230.
council, whether you wanna put it on for next regular meeting.
And Josh, you feel the stormwater issues are resolved now?
Yeah, what they had submitted meets the current ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
I had made a couple of minor comments there. There were some just discrepancies on some labeling. And I just requested, infiltration testing for the BMP, but other than that, yeah, what they proposed dimensionally was correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and usually if there are unresolved but minor comments from the engineer, a lot of times it's what's called a conditional approval, that it's approved, conditioned upon the 1, 2, and 3 being taken care of, and then we would usually kick out a little letter decision saying, you know, and then if you didn't agree with the conditions, you could appeal that. Obviously, if it's denied, you decided to appeal it, or you're doing a different plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
So, am I understanding that you would like to be at the next meeting and you would present whatever you have on the agenda?
That would be wonderful, if that's an option.
So then we're going to move for action to the next meeting, approval of the final land development plan before us.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, and Grace, we would put on the agenda the full name of the plan, so you know, anybody looking knows this is the.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming, Mr. Obenstein.
Thank you for your time.
You bet. Agenda item number 4, special event, the graduation parade.
I don't think I had the detail on the graduation parade. Does any councilor have a detail on that? Is that in our
Yeah,
packet?
here's the application. We did notice that the parade would fall next,
It's sharp in here
on the
somewhere.
date of our next
Just
meeting.
didn't know if that was in there. This is on the agenda because we need to vote because of time.
It's time sensitive, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that's the special request from Christopher Sattel,
Sattel.
principal at the high school.
Mhm.
And they want to have the event on June the 7th at, from like approximately, I guess, 7:15 to 8 PM. And there is directions on there. I guess the parade is from North Union to the square, left on Main, same as they did last year.
So moved.
Second.
Dan, it does indicate a police presence is needed, so, okay. I'm sorry, I have a motion from Counselor Seitz
Yes.
and a second from Counselor Kliskevich. Any questions or comments? Since the parade falls on a council business meeting, I think we did last year for the graduation parade, we decided to move our meeting date to the day after. Is council interested in doing that again this year? If so, we would need a motion to amend the agenda to add a meeting date change.
Ellen, you needed to take the vote then for your motion.
For the parade.
For the parade.
For the parade.
We have a motion and second. Any questions on the parade? If not, then we'll see. Vote on accepting the special request.
Okay.
Please.
If all in favor then to accept the request for the parade?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, now,
Thank you, Ken.
question on the, now, anybody want to have discussion on possibly changing the date of our next meeting, or you want to just keep it the way it is?
I'm okay with keeping it the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any kids in school anymore.
I'm,
I believe last year when we changed it, it's because the seniors had such a challenging
Yeah.
Yes.
2 years with COVID and out of support of that. Well then, it will stand at the date. Thank you. Agenda item number 5, manager report.
Okay, we have a couple of people who submitted resignation letters from the planning commission. I put that on the agenda for a business meeting in June. And item number 3 there is the graduation parade, which we just discussed and voted on. Item 4 is a special event request received from Mara. They want to hold movies at Huffer Park from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Wednesday, August 17th, with the rain date of the 18th. I'd like to put that on the agenda for our business meeting if nobody has any objections or questions.
You-
Did you want me to stay, Ken? Did
No,
want me to-
you can.
Oh, okay.
If you want.
Sorry.
Thanks, Josh.
And Josh, real quick, in case there's a question here before you run out, just this next thing is the rep agreement with Dauphin County. We discussed that somewhat at length. That's before you, the agreement's in your packet. Is everybody okay with putting that on the agenda for a vote at our next meeting? Everybody understand what we're doing there?
Aaron Latavik and a representative from the county offered to be here at the next meeting if you guys had any questions or wanted to discuss it in depth.
I think that's a good idea. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's,
It's an agreement that would run through to end of 2028 before you can get out if you decide you want to get out of it.
yeah, I mean, the way they have it written, it actually says it's perpetual.
It is, but you can, there's an
The
out.
argument is at the end of the next, 2028, you really would be able to get out, and there are
Okay, so that's
issues about whether it really could bind future council and all, you know, that's one of those argumentative things, but.
so June 7th. You'd like them there?
June 7th, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
I'll
we'll
make-
have that on the agenda. Thanks, Josh. Item number 6, informational, we talk about whether or not council's interested in developing a food truck ordinance. Our zoning codes official had received, I think, 2 or 3 calls this year about food trucks that wanted to come into town. I checked, some of our local neighbors or small communities around don't have food truck ordinances, but Hummelstown does. So I made a copy of their ordinance and put in your packet. Essentially what Hummelstown is saying is they're prohibiting food trucks from coming into town except for special events where, or on private property. They're allowed to, like, you know, a church wants to have an event in their parking lot, of course they can have a food truck. But
Yeah,
basically,
so I was gonna say, I can add a little bit to the.
okay,
There are things, if you do want to allow them, that are, and you want to regulate them, some of the concepts that, you know, a municipality can, or if it wants to bake into there, you can have the concepts of, you know, licenses or permits, obviously. Some of them do kind of aim them at places where there are places of employment for employee lunches and things like that. But obviously, you can have specific regulations concerning how much time they can be at certain places and maybe where they can be, that the window has to, you know, the serving window is facing the sidewalk, that they're not, you know, serving cars driving by. You know, maybe setting hours, like from this hour to this hour is the only, you know, on these days of the week, from, you know, 7 in the morning to whatever. So, and you could even limit them to certain zones, you know, zoning districts, or, you know.
there's a lot of stuff you can do, but
Yeah.
I'm not here really to recommend that tonight. I'm more like recommending an ordinance that would prohibit them. You have time to think about it later and change it. Because when I did my research, I couldn't find it permissible, what he's describing in any small community. I only found it in the cities. York, Lancaster, Harrisburg.
Yeah, you do generally see them in a city because of the big offices and things like that. And they are, you know, obviously right away when you think food truck, you think of all the safety issues and things, but they're actually regulated by the state. You know, so they are under the Department of Agriculture, and they are theoretically just like a restaurant in terms of, you know, the standards, and so we wouldn't normally get into that kind of stuff.
Right.
That
Then Ken,
theoretically is taken care of. So.
given that, why don't we direct an ordinance following those outlines that food trucks are permissible on private property, private events, or a special event, but not to conduct regular business?
If we want to have a special event, say downtown, some holiday or something.
Right.
Then we maybe council would allow it on that case-by-case
Right.
basis for their own special event, but not as a rule that you can come in here Monday through Friday and compete with the Brownstone or Tattered Flag. I just think that could be problematic, because they're going to
Does
set up
the
in
rest of
those
council
areas.
feel like that is the direction that we would want to go? Okay.
So when we do say you can do it on private property, is that with like a one-time permit kind of, because you know, it's funny if you try to address them in the zoning ordinance. Some people start saying, well, if I can do it on private property and I have private property right next to the brownstone, can I pull one
I'll
up there?
pull one up.
But you also, whenever you dabble, as you know, with the zoning ordinance, you can tattoo somebody with grandfather rights and things like that. So I will say there are some places that for things that we would want to have as temporary uses, trying to put in the zoning
This is
ordinance.
what-
This is an example of what
Temporary.
Hummelstown did.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
this
know.
is a health and safety one. so,
Yeah.
You know,
That's where it prohibits it.
yeah, so if you wanted to do, and like I said, as you guys know, we represent Hummelstown. so
Right.
I'm sorry, you need one more?
Oh, pardon.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So maybe the better language is private events.
So we don't
Which are not open to
necessarily
the
need to
public.
put it on the agenda for the next business meeting. If you want to look at this for a while and think about it, and we can bring it up in our next or workshop,
Yeah, it probably makes sense to.
okay?
Take
I
a
just
look
wanted to
at
get it out
Yeah.
there and discuss it, you know, a preliminary
Okay.
discussion, and let you know that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, the other thing I have in there, agenda item 6, is the Emo Streetscape project. we were intending to close Scott Alley if that, that design stands the way we intended, but there was some discussion about maybe we want to think about closing that alley before that project gets off the ground for safety issues. I looked at the code and I wasn't sure, I mean, as far as abandoning streets or alleys, I wouldn't recommend that there because those businesses have to get access to the back of their properties, like the pizza shop and so forth. But as far as making it a dead end, I couldn't find the regulations on that, if we could do
Yeah,
that.
so, and you had raised a question, and I thought you were talking about actually vacating it.
No.
I was gonna say, you always have to be careful vacating public ways, because, among other things, it raises issues if you have pipes or anything under there. Theoretically, if you vacate it, you
There's
lose
pipes
the
under there.
right to have the, utilities under it, and you may have to get into condemning it back and weird things like that. And you do have issues of, you have to go through a proceeding to
Right.
vacate, and the adjoiners, if they really are, it's one thing, it's the old paper street, but if it really is an alley that people use, they can come in and oppose it.
Well, I was one of those counselors that asked for it under discussion, and I did have a chance to check in with Public Works with Greg.
Okay.
And he explained, and Greg, make sure I'm explaining your explanation correctly, that the closure of Scott Alley is included in the Emaw Street project, which may make sense to keep it there because there's expenses incurred in closing a street, new curbing, for example, and that should we be awarded, then those expenses would be covered by the grant. If we are not awarded that, and you thought we might know by October or so, I know you can't control, in the fall, then we could take it up on our own and close it, and then incur the expenses of the required curbing and so on.
Okay, so help me understand though, so we're talking about there's an existing physical alley there,
Right.
and we now want to have no alley,
It's a one-way alley
okay, one-way alley,
from Brown
and we
to-
are talking about turning it into not a street, and it falling,
My question is, when we look at that, we're gonna need the solicitor to look at, my question is, instead of vacating the street, can we just make it a dead end? From Brown on to Scott, it dead ends before you get to Emo Street. That's my question, because we
And then
got
it
it.
would be a walkway from the borough parking lot. It would be a pedestrian walkway to get to the
Okay.
I
Emo
think
Street
we-
and downtown.
I think we need
okay.
to ask.
Yeah, I was gonna
Jim-
say, I'll need to actually understand, I'll have to drive there, look at it, and see.
I think we have to ask.
Oh, it is, okay. Oh, this one.
Yeah, it's the one right
Oh.
beside the borough.
I didn't know that was the name of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's one
Okay, I
that
got
right
it.
now, we would actually probably just turn it into a.
Now, I
dead
know where
end,
we're
which
talking
would make
about.
it too
I didn't know that was the name of
That,
it.
yeah,
Okay.
Since, there's a legal question there, I think maybe we should just have him look at it now if we're looking at applying for a grant for that project.
okay,
Council, what do you think? Just let him look into it now, spend some time.
okay, that sounds good. Okay, Greg, thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of things that weren't on my agenda, informational. Well, one of the things Jack pointed out, our agenda packet is now on our website. And I got a request from a person who is interested in buying our old Sea Grace fire truck. We don't need to have an answer tonight, but I'll just throw that out there. That's the blue one that we use for parades sometimes, and Public Works uses it sometimes for washdown. Somebody who has a fire truck museum in Virginia, used to be a Middletown resident, is interested in buying it. So I'll throw that out there. I told him to get back to you. You guys can think about that, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting. And we also have a request, or I should say application from Michael, is it Riker, Angie? Michael Riker has applied. Ricker?
Richard.
Richard. Third time's a charm. For our vacancy on our zoning board. So if you want to put that on the agenda for the next
Okay.
meeting, or council. That's all I have.
So earlier, you guys put on the agenda the planning commission resignations. Is that resignations and all, is there anybody applying, or are we looking for anybody?
Well, we've advertised the planning commission vacancies. Yeah, we're waiting for somebody to apply. So if you're watching tonight, please submit your request to be on our planning commission. We need at
The
least
other thing that.
2 people.
Just remind the board, council, that, you know, you can, this is one of those weird things where a council member can be on. And I don't know that anybody wants to do it, but, you know, you do have at least that option. One of you actually, you know, volunteering to do that.
I was also, if we're on to the next item, I was also informed that council may wish to discuss the one-way street, the traffic study plan for Roosevelt Oak Hill. The ordinance has been drafted, and we want to put that on the agenda for a business meeting, that ordinance for advertisement. We need your approval to advertise before it would be the next.
We have it in the pack, though.
Mhm.
Pay attention.
Just regarding that, I think that, before we do advertise it, if we could figure out a way, to reach out to like the residents in that area, because that's a big deal, changing both of those streets, in addition to, the four-way stop sign, and maybe inform them that, you know, somehow give them access to it so they know that it's coming, or, whether we door tag and say, you know, we're looking at making this change, we want everyone to know so that we can get, you know, some feedback and to make sure that everyone in that area is aware. Because like in your report where you say about, or you said about, I'm not saying hold a public meeting, I think having a meeting, like notifying them, okay, at our next business meeting, this is gonna be on the agenda again, so you're
Yeah.
aware, so, and if he could be here, so if people have questions of him as well, because he would be able to explain.
You should have Eric.
Well,
I
whoever.
personally don't do the traffic studies. That Eric and Brittany did it. They were at the last meeting. But I can. It's going to be an agenda item that you think is going to spark discussion. If you give us some heads up on that, I can have Eric attend that meeting as well.
So if we can, you know,
I just
Yep.
like to make that clear, just because I didn't do. I'm not a traffic guy, unfortunately.
Any other thoughts on
Only the people
that were in favor.
the suggestion of doing some other type of notice for public?
I mean, I agree with that. I don't know if everybody in the other blocks know. I mean, I think she did a job notifying people. I told my dad, who would be affected on the same street that Angela would be, and I think he talked to some of his neighbors. But other than that, I don't know if anyone is aware,
Right,
except for the communication that maybe
right,
or I did. And if they're watching.
right. So what are you guys thinking? Like a flyer or something that goes inside their screen door or something, or just a Facebook post again, or combination?
I would think something out to them.
To have somebody go door to door and put a flyer out?
I mean, I think the Facebook post is a good idea also, but, you know, we know that not everybody in town is on Facebook, you know. If we.
Now, what range of the area do you think we should cover with the notification? Like from east of Union Street over to Vine, all the way over to Vine, or, you know, is there limits we should be looking at where we do these? 'Cause-
I personally think the only people that should be getting notification are the people that it affects directly, and that would be the 3 blocks of Oak Hill Drive that are being affected by the change.
Well, and Roosevelt.
Well,
Yeah.
the people from Roosevelt
Yeah,
Avenue
yeah,
showed
they
up
know,
there
they know,
and
yeah.
said why they wanted to do
They
something.
know, yeah.
I have yet to see anybody else, except for the people from Roosevelt Avenue, come here and put forth any effort to say, this is why we want the change. It's for safety.
I would agree with you, Rich, that it should be the people.
3 blocks.
Those blocks, and notify Roosevelt though as well, because,
To let them know.
yeah, because that would affect them.
Well, but I think the streets next to Oak Hill, maybe 2 or 3 over in that block area though, not the whole way past, Briarcliff there, that was the line, right, Briarcliff?
Briarcliff.
Like
Briarcliff's
hillside
already
and
one way from there up.
Well, that's where the study cut off at, from Oak Hill to Briarcliff, making it one way. That's
No,
what I'm
actually,
saying,
if you
to
read the
Briarcliff.
study, Matter of fact, you, and
actually
listen,
don't need to get all
it's my
beside
turn to
yourself.
speak.
I mean.
You two wanted to expand it to the whole Oak Hills area, and HRG did a fantastic job. We spent a lot of money getting this study
Oh, I'm
done.
aware of how much we spent.
Well, and if you read the study, you'd probably understand what they're saying.
I do, thank you. It's not about me. This is about the other residents in the area, not just the ones on your block,
Okay?
your house that it's going to affect. There are other residents that live in this area that aren't aware of it.
I-
All I'm simply asking is that we do a better effort to make sure that those residents are aware. If they choose to come, great. If they don't,
Okay.
then we'll vote. It's pretty simple.
Nobody's saying we're not gonna do it.
So back to, yes, Mayor.
I just wanted to chime in. I think it's a total waste of money to put flyers indoors. And when you do that, somebody will not get a flyer, and they will say, how come I didn't get a flyer? I wanted to know. The purpose of it being on the next meeting is you're putting it on an agenda that's publicized to the general population. They know it's on there. When you vote at the next meeting, you're advertising the ordinance. It's going to be on social media. While not everyone has social media, the ordinance has to be advertised in a paper of general circulation. We're not going to get into the habit, I would hope, of putting flyers in the doors of every residence and spending staff time, et cetera, every time we pass a new ordinance. Frankly, that could be something that a council member does on their own.
Actually, if you make up the flyer, I'll get them out myself.
There you go. Perfect.
Yes, and just,
I'll help you out with that.
thank you.
Okay.
I still think that you're running into a problem where I don't know how you're going to do that every time you pass an ordinance because you.
I'm not suggesting it for every ordinance.
Angela Lloyd, have some
What,
respect.
James Curry?
You have 7 people at the table, and you can't even get the 7 to agree as to what street should have the flyer. So my point is, you're going to do that, and there's going to be people disappointed that they didn't get it. You're just creating another problem.
Let's just then go back to Councilor Kliskevich's suggestion of the 3 blocks of Oak Hill and
The first block of road.
the first block of Roosevelt. So we have determined, right, we have determined who's going to receive them. And so if someone says, I didn't get it, we know
Yes,
why.
absolutely.
It was these streets,
Yeah.
and these are the ones who are most directly affected, inviting them to come next time.
And can you have whomever you said?
So you're suggesting the 3 blocks is what?
June 7th,
Angie
correct?
is going to go hand them out, or you're?
Yes, and Angie
The next
volunteered
meeting, the
to
next
hand
meeting.
out
Okay.
the
Yeah, but
flyers.
What the-
whatever that Tuesday is.
The information printed out, she can,
Yeah.
okay,
Eric and Aaron,
okay. Good, thank you.
thank you.
All right, so at this point then, we hold off on putting do you want to hold off, or do you want to put the advertisement on the agenda for a possible vote? We'll get the flyer out this week, and they'll have time until June 7th to come in and talk.
Yes.
And then we can decide whether we voted up or down.
And
the
then we'll know
advertisement.
then.
I mean,
And we'll just be
we keep dragging stuff
fully
out.
informed.
This has been looked at for over a year now.
Okay.
So we will be moving it to decide to advertise it at the next meeting. All right, thank you.
Okay. We have I think I missed a special request from Mara.
No, you said that.
Did I say that already?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the movie. Okay, I
That's
got
the
my stuff
movie,
out of
yeah.
order, I'm sorry. So we're on to codes. And anybody have any questions concerning our codes department? There's a report in there with a bunch of stats. With the sidewalk inspections, 82 NOVs were out, 19 high grass door hangers were posted, 6 citations were issued. So we are ramped up to, with this spring, with the rain and the grass growing fast, we've made codes aware to put 2 people on that grass issue. Both our part-time Bethany and Harry are looking at grass issues right now, so.
And in your report, you note that we haven't yet had any applicants for the zoning officer,
That's correct.
but we re-advertised with the salary range on it this time, so maybe that will encourage some folks.
Yep, we'll give you a report the next meeting.
Okay.
Where do we advertise the positions at? I know it is on the borough website and Facebook, I saw it.
Yeah, it was on Indeed, it went to the PennBach website, which is
I didn't do it on Indeed, but it's on PennBach, it's on Pennsylvania State Association
the
of
boroughs.
Boroughs,
Capcom?
and it's on CapCog.
Okay.
I was at a CapCog managers meeting recently, and there were 20 borough managers there, and they were all lamenting difficulty in finding employees, anywhere from police officers to code enforcement officers to public works people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we just hired the zoning officer in Susquehanna Township this week.
Yeah, he stole them from another municipality is what he did.
Oh, my.
It's exactly what he did.
Stealing codes officers, my.
Lured them away.
Mr. Wright? Agenda item number 7, the finance report.
Hi.
Hey,
So the only thing that, I actually have 2 items. If you don't have any questions on the general report, I have 2 items that I'm requesting action on for the next business meeting. One is changing the electric service ordinance, which I believe Jim provided a suggested ordinance change for that. Is that in the packet? That's in your packet. Basically, all it does is add the director of finance in as approval. So that when because I'm the one reviewing them anyway.
right.
And they get 1 a year. It's pretty simple.
So we'll
and
move that to
there's-
the next meeting.
Yeah, if we could vote on that ordinance for the next meeting.
Thank you.
The second item is Grace and myself and Matt and whoever else we can kind of involve in a circle. We're starting to draft up requests for IT services. Our contract with Intermix ends in December, so we want to get together information for quotes to be submitted.
Okay.
And I think we're going to probably, Grace is going to contact a few people to make sure that the information that we're putting out there is truly in line with what we have and what we need, and what we plan on doing moving forward.
Okay, great.
So I'd just like permission, or I guess it was just notification.
Just
that we're
information.
doing that.
When we get that prepared.
Do we have any questions?
I have none.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Thanks, Sal.
Thank you, Sally. Agenda item number 8, the police report.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I hope everybody's doing well tonight. I just have a few issues I'd like to highlight on my report. If you have any other questions, feel free to interrupt. The one thing I want to talk about is the equipment review in the department. As I've been here for several weeks, one of the things we've gone through is an inventory and evaluation of the equipment in the apartment. In the department, specifically, we did some spring qualifying with munitions and less lethal munitions. And this is one of the better equipped police departments that I've ever been involved in. And I'd like to thank council and the mayor. Clearly, you've supported this department, and I think it's excellent. Specifically in less lethal munitions, we have some less lethal munitions that are important. Police departments, nobody wants to use lethal force, and the ability to have these in all situations is great. So I don't want to go through everything specifically, but it's pretty impressive
Thank you.
the caliber of the equipment. We've been requested again by the Amtrak Police. It sounds like this is going to be a monthly or bi-monthly thing to participate in Project Railsafe. That's where we do some visibility at the new train station when there's departing and arriving trains. We're going to participate in that. It doesn't cost us any additional resources or money. It's just something we can do as a part of our normal operations. I put out something about the speed sign data that I've been requested to provide. Just to go over it real quick, there's some visual data on here that's interesting, but the most important things I believe are the last 2 pages. It talks about Percentage of vehicles exceeding the speed limit and based on what particular speeds. 40 is kind of an unwritten starting point for enforcement in a 25 mile an hour speed limit zone. So less than 1% of the vehicles were exceeding 40 miles an hour. Comes down to approximately 100 vehicles over the course of 30 days. So that's a good indicator to decide if this would be a good location for enforcement. So if you're looking at 3 people speeding during the day, this might not be a good place to put your resources, unless you could specifically with the data on here say it's happening between 4:30 and 5 o'clock every day. That's something you could potentially put together. But based on this, with just looking at it, it looks like most of the people are driving in accordance with the speed limit. I think the average speed was 25 incoming and 25 outgoing. We're planning on moving one of these based on complaints if we can. I'm also looking at potentially, with looking at the budget, maybe buying 1 or 2 more of these or requesting to. I think these are great. I think they're helpful. I think, when I'm driving and I see one, I hit the brakes, I slow down. And they're also good at evaluating where you can put your resources for speed enforcement. So I think it's a great tool. So if anybody has any questions about this, you can let me know. Calls for service, I'm still working on getting a regular calls for service report to you. And one of the things I do that's a little bit different is calls for service reports sometimes are just a number. And I like to try to break it down so that it's calls for service that are public initiated or calls for service that are self-initiated by officers. So let's say on a midnight shift on a Sunday into Monday midnight shift, there's no calls for service that are public initiated calls for service. And those can be anything from help 911, I need help, or somebody speeding down the road, which requires an enforcement action by the police, is a calls for service. So, but we also generate calls for doing other things, self-initiated calls, directed patrols, Hoffer Park checks, business checks, building checks, evidence processing by officers. So say we have 500 calls for service over a period of time. I like to be able to say 240 of them were initiated by a public request and 260 of them were initiated by us. Some of them are just clerical things, but most of them are actually initiated work by officers. So I'm working on that. Hopefully I can have it for you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. That's going to be very helpful when we are considering coverage and future decisions. Thank you.
I think so. An update for the posting for the police secretary position. We made an offer on employment to somebody. They haven't yet accepted the position because of they're moving to the area and they're having trouble finding a place to live. So not specifically in Middletown, but the person offered the job is moving here with somebody else who got a job in Lancaster County, and they're trying to find a place in between. So that they want to work here, but they need to find gainful a place to live, and we're not waiting 6 months for them to find the right apartment. So that's something we're working on. The police staffing update, we had an applicant who was in the background phase of the hiring process. We talked I heard you talk earlier about employment and the struggles with employment. This young man worked for a business who found out he was looking at a police job and made an offer to him that he couldn't refuse. That included some additional pay benefits and some part of the business. So he withdrew his name. So we no longer have any viable applicants off the current civil service list. I'm requesting at the next meeting that you direct civil service to complete a new eligibility list if possible. I also have some dates for the consortium down below. The deadline for the application was May 13th. They received 80 applications this year, and last year at the same time they received 171. So things aren't looking very good in that area either. But physical agility test is June 4th, the written test is June 11th, scoring is the 13th, and by the 20th, the applicants will have their scores. They can go on the police app and decide which police departments they want to work for. And then based on that, we can then schedule interviews civil service can schedule interviews and put a list together.
Okay.
One thing I want to point out, so everybody's clear. I think the last time we gave approval for hiring was to replace Officer Zaring. But since that time, another officer has left, and I don't know that we went and discussed that
Okay.
as far as council given the green light to go and fill that position as well. Mike, is that,
Is that
anybody
something I have to
recall it
report?
different? Is that, when, when we did this before, we didn't know Sergeant Yoder was leaving at the time. When we
Actually,
did-
didn't we have two? Because George Miller left also.
But he wasn't considered full-time, he's considered part-time on our list.
Right.
All right, so he can, I think, go out and fill part-time, but the council has to hire the full-time.
Is that something I have to request council to do, is fill the position
Is
left
that
by
something
Scott
we
Yoder?
have to vote on? We would make a motion?
Well, that, we did before with the Zaring,
Okay.
because
Oh,
we
we
had
did
discussions
before with
about
Zaring?
budget, so that's why I'm,
Can we put that on the agenda for the next meeting then?
Well, I don't know you have to vote, I just want to, I think if there's a consensus that,
We lost
The-
2 officers.
Yeah, we need to
Right.
fill them.
I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that we're on the record, that we're all on board with that.
And I talked to Amy Scheffler, who's in charge of the Civil Service Commission, and she indicated they can expedite this process. And from talking to other chiefs in the area, most departments are looking to hire, so this is going to happen quickly.
That's why I bring it up, I want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
It's going
Okay.
to happen quickly. And when I looked at the civil service list that was expiring in June, I think Officer Staley was hired from that list. Everybody else on that list had been hired by other departments except 1 or 2 people. So the list usually contains some viable applicants.
Right. Then you have council consensus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions?
The gentleman that you had in the process, was he full-time or part-time?
He would have been a full-time officer.
Do you have any part-time people in the mix at all?
We have some applicants in police app that I can look at and try to fill. We have one full-time officer part-time officer who's working pretty regularly. We have another one who was in a management school for his full-time position, which will be coming back into the part-time rotation. And then we have another officer who was off for a period of time for some personal things that I'm getting back into the rotation too. So
Okay. Counselor Seitz?
My question was going to be, where are we with the body cam policy? I know that was slightly before your time, but what's the progress?
both the union and the borough have presented examples of it, and it's currently being discussed on how to negotiate it. So as soon as I can get it to you, I'll get it to you. I have a quote, so
2-3 months?
I don't think it'll take that long.
That was my question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wright, so
Thank you.
much.
Just for the record, I want to state that Mayor Curry left the meeting, but he is now participating by phone.
Okay. Thank you.
May I ask one question?
Certainly.
If I heard Dan ask for permission in terms of an additional sign or two, is that something that we can look at the next meeting?
An additional,
I think he should come back with some price quotes, and then we can talk about it.
I didn't ask I'll be more than happy to get some price quotes back. When I mentioned it, it was more for the 2023 budget.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we can't look at it now.
Well,
I
it'd
can-
be good.
I can get some quotes. I can
Get some quotes, and we'll use them for the budget.
Okay, I can do that.
Thanks, Jim.
agenda item number 9, Public Works.
Good evening. Is there any questions on the points of interest? If not, I'll just hit a couple bullets. Number 20, I wanted to thank Matt. He worked hard on this. The borough was awarded the 902 grant from DEP for $276,642 to purchase a new leaf collector, and it's going to also offset some of the costs of the chassis itself.
Mhm.
So this vehicle is gonna be a multi-purpose vehicle. It'll be a flatbed, leaf picker, dump truck, salt spreader, liquid. So.
Thank you.
Yes, so Matt done a good job on that, and, that's one of the benefits of having, your woody waste facility also.
Mhm.
You can apply for some of these grants for that.
Mm.
We received a new dump truck, that was spec'd out about a year and a half ago, I guess, from, the ICDA funds. That's been put into service. We're also, obtaining quotes for the roof at the main pavilion at Hoffer Park is in not good shape. And we anticipated, I'm thinking around $10,000. So we'll know once all the quotes come in. That has to be replaced. We rent it out, and we can't rent that out when it's leaking, and to find the leaks, it's all over with the shingles. So, one other thing, I was asked to look into a site distance issue on Ann Street, there at Catherine Street, coming north on Catherine, up and down Ann Street. So I'm waiting on HRG to give me a quote to do a site distance study to see if we have to push parking back. Parking's at a premium on Ann Street, as we all know, so it's gonna not make someone happy.
Mm.
But in for safety reasons, if it has to be done, it has to be done. And that is a bad intersection. You go up the Wood, you have the red lights there, which is great. And I think Catherine and Union Street has a red light. Catherine Street is a problematic area, and a lot of people use that intersection. So when people are parked there, you cannot see, and if traffic's flowing freely, it's tough. So once I get that, I'll present it to council to look. For action items, we'll need to approve the liquid fuels funds to be utilized for crack sealing and the roadway striping, per our bids that we received from the CAPCOG at the next meeting. And those prices are on the sheet: $48,000 for crack sealing, $27,856 for the roadway striping, which is not just paint; it's an actual reflective material that they put down. They did do some of Main Street. We still have a couple intersections on Main to finish. This is looking out Union Street and some of our other cross streets that we have this.
Yeah, one of the main parts of the striping is, I received quotes to put, they're commonly called piano keys in the crosswalks.
That's correct.
And since we are, as Greg noted, using thermoplastic rather than paint, the main bulk of this probably only has to be done maybe 4 years, 3-4 years, something like that, as that stuff wears. It wears much better than paint. But the piano keys, since we have had some incidents on Main Street, it will greatly improve visibility of the crosswalks.
And that was one of the main recommendations that we had from the study for pedestrian safety for Main Street, was going to the piano key style crosswalks,
Thank
which
you.
does greatly increase visibility.
Yeah, thank you.
Also, we'd like to approve the purchase to replace the bleachers in our parks, in our baseball fields and football fields. The current bleachers we have are probably 40, 50 years old, metal. They don't have the sides on. They are non-conforming. Wood needs replaced on a lot of them. Half of them are painted halfway through. So we kind of looked at it as a safety issue and as a long-term maintenance issue for replacing. So
How many bleachers does 43 grand buy us? We know?
I don't have that amount.
I know you're talking about Oak Hills, because that has like 4 set. or like 4 bleachers, right?
Yeah, it's,
2 on each side of the ball
it's
field.
Oak Hills. It's the 3 ball fields down Susquehanna. It is the fields at, I believe you included the fields at,
It was, at
Few.
Oak Hills, it was 4 sets of 5-row bleachers. At Fry, it was 4 sets of 3-row bleachers. At Med Ed, it was 2 sets of 3-row bleachers. And at Susquehanna, it was 4 sets of 3-row bleachers. So that's, 12, 13, 14 sets of bleachers.
14,
Yeah.
14
My math
cents
is correct.
total. Yes.
Who uses, Fry?
There's
Multiple people, baseball, t-ball, and also, I believe Seven Sorrows uses it for
For
football.
football practice,
Yes.
right? Okay. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now, we don't have any 3-row. All of our bleachers that we currently have are 5-row, and it's not compliant with code any longer. Plus, I think some of the field, like, when I saw go to a game, a lot of people sit in their own chairs. So I think we can probably get rid of some of the 5 rows, and that eliminates the whole fence around them, which makes the cost much higher. But this is just a start if you want more information. There is everything in your packet.
Oh, yeah, no, I saw the proposal, and the 5 rows are a lot cheaper, or a lot more expensive than the
It's the
3
fencing
rows.
to keep
Yeah.
people from falling.
Well, that's why I was asking, like, how much does Fry get
They're all,
used? if
they
we
all
do them?
aluminum too.
Everything's total.
They're all aluminum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of, some of ours have wood seating, right?
They all have wooden seats.
They're all wood and
Steel.
regular steel, rusted steel frames, rusted bolts.
Yeah, this is a good thing
Yeah.
for our parks. Thank you so much.
And we'll secure them to the ground.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
For your consideration.
The last thing we had, there was a request for some updates to the Fry Manor Park area around the basketball courts, which would include paving the parking area that is currently stone, right now, stone and grass and weeds, and also putting some fencing up to keep the balls from going out into Fry Avenue.
Okay.
I believe that's all that,
Yeah, that's what the project would consist of. It's about 10 parking spaces that's there now. Because of the way the curb cut is, we really wouldn't expand the parking at all. And the concern was raised that as people miss the basketball backstop or backboard, they bounce out onto the street. We have fence material. We would have to get the framework for the fence, the posts and the rails. We have the fabric, and Public Works can do the parking lot. It's an unbudgeted expense that was brought to me to look into, so I just wanted to
Thank you.
throw that out.
Perfect.
it's unbudgeted, but we do have money in there for the paving part of it.
Yeah.
That would
Okay.
help on that side of it.
Well,
so.
the bleachers aren't budgeted either. That's $43,000. So I want council all to
The bleachers, we-
recognize it was suggested to use some of the proceeds from the Elks.
From the Elks.
Sally, I
correct.
believe that proceeds, did that go into a special fund or just into cash, pooled cash? So are we gonna have our,
Sally had it in a special fund.
Yeah, it's in a special.
is it?
Yeah.
But it's earmarked for what?
As we use, special funding, I set up a special fund, on the income side. And then depending on where it's used, like if it's worked in 430, I open up an expense account that would say bleachers.
Right.
And that way we know how the funds were being used.
President Redinger had brought both the Fry and as well as the possibly using some Elks money for improving the parks. That's where I had gotten the idea or the pathway to suggest possibly Elks money for that to reinvest in our parks.
Okay, that just, if council's in favor of that next, business meeting, we'll just have to make that part of the motion, that money will get moved and earmarked for that project.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I have. Is there any questions on any other items?
Counselor Seitz has a question?
Yes.
Main Street Gym, so the exterior walls, they're complete. And then,
No, they are.
they are? And then the concrete, like the steps, that's what will be finished, will begin in 2 weeks, is that
Yes.
correct? And then that'll be everything, that'll be
on
all
our
the
end.
obligations that we said to them.
Yes.
By June, yeah.
And then they'll be, okay,
Our obligations will be met.
all right. That was one of my questions. And
Yeah.
then the other question I had, Greg, it was brought up to me, the military banner program.
Yes.
What would your thoughts about bringing that back be, like in terms of, how would that affect you and putting them up? How long did it take and so forth? Is that something you think could be feasible if it was done, once a year? You put them up once, take them down once.
I try and stay out of that because that's a real political project. We can put them up. Yes, yeah, we will put them up. We like before, we kind of tried to keep it confined to our historic lights. Then it expanded, and also the program itself expanded to people that weren't really in town, or they lived in the school district, rather than making it a borough. That you should live in the borough to have the banner project. So that escalated the count to 2 something. I don't remember. 3.
I wasn't here when you got
It was a lot.
So what's like 100? Is that a feasible number for you?
It's at least twice.
Yeah,
is that a feasible?
Yeah, I mean,
I think when we started this, there was like 80 decorative light poles that already.
correct. That's what we
stand.
liked. We tried to keep
And
it
then-
at, but
The project grew in popularity and it expanded, and we purchased some poles to put on the utility poles, the wooden poles, and that's how it ended up through a lot of areas of town. And it was well received, but then again, there are some issues with that, like once they come down, are we going to be responsible for storm, or do we give them back? And then we have to set up time. I think when we tried to give them back at the end of that program, it took months till we were able to get them all back, and there were a few claims of damage, or ones that were blown down in the wind, and we had to tell them, look, sorry, but we're not going to pay for that.
So let me ask you, because private individual. So if it was brought to the group that maybe, hey, there's 100 or 80, whatever that number is, whatever the easiest number is, and you take them down, directly hand them to said individual, and then they disperse them.
That would be good.
That
Yeah,
would be.
that would be better.
That's what we.
if there is someone that's going to head the program.
If it's
My idea of the program, it should last the term of the banner life. If you're going to do it, most places do it for like a 5-year thing, and I have no problem doing it because I think it really looked good in town. People really, it was a good program. People liked it. It was tough for us to try and do it with such short
But
staff.
I think what, and I wasn't here either, but if I recall, the borough does not want to get into the position of managing the project again. We just want to say, here are 110 banners to put up.
Here's
And so
the
you-
youth club runs it or somebody.
Yeah, we didn't want
and
to
then
buy the
they
banners for
get-
people and handle their money.
Yeah, we don't want to manage it, but we want them to abide by, we did come up with a policy on banners, on that subject itself, and I have a written policy on it.
So that would be good.
And if we could abide by the policy, then I think the program would work fine. And just as long as, like I said, the borough, because I know she was really involved, and that's a lot of work.
Well, we've
that Grace-
learned, I
that
think we
Grace
learned
started
some
putting
lessons
into it.
there.
Yeah.
I think we learned some lessons, so we will
Putting
learn
up and
from
taking
those
it down
lessons.
is
And
nothing.
Scott, if you're in contact with an organization who wants to take that project on again, and just keep us
As
informed.
long as they run it like that, which I think is
Yeah, I think we should sit down with them too. There has to be an agreement with them and the borough, and that's how we drafted this.
So if that comes to pass, then we'll just make sure that they sit down with you and you can share the requirements and lessons learned, and
Yes.
we'll go forward. Very
Yeah,
good.
and I don't mind. We left, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but we left most of the brackets up. So there are, a lot of the brackets are
That's
still
good to know.
up around Main Street and Union Street. They're the main streets that you want them.
Right.
So,
Do we want to determine the number? Because the number was a big.
I think that was part of, the consensus on that draft, that council adopted that.
And there is a number of banners that we're
Correct.
comfortable.
Yeah, that the borough is allowed to determine the number of banners accepted
Okay.
to put up.
That's good. As I
So-
recall, that was a
Yeah,
difficult moment.
correct.
Good.
Yeah, it just kept expanding and,
Yeah.
it's a great program. It
Right.
serves our military veterans
Yeah.
well. But we just,
Great.
hopefully they can find someone that.
Great. Greg, can I ask a quick question about number 18?
Sure.
Is there a time frame for the cameras arriving and installation?
We have another meeting with them, I believe, Monday. The engineering just seems to be going on and on with this, and hopefully we're gonna put it to rest Monday and get them to get this thing out to bid.
Okay.
So,
The cameras that are mentioned in 18.
are not part of
are
this
trail
project.
cams.
Yeah, these are trail cameras.
We are having success
Oh.
with them. We're working, PD has actually, I think, made 2
Okay.
arrests off of the trail cams. So in the stopgap until we can move toward, and even once we have the official whole camera system, it's only as good as where it's pointed.
Right.
We obviously can't.
Well, then we'll wait for the meeting report. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Seiss, did you have another question or thought for Greg?
No, I don't, not right now.
Okay. Anything else?
If I may add one thing, Sally was wonderful pulling stuff together for the DEP grant. Her fast fingers, we submitted that thing at 4:59:59 for a 5 PM deadline.
All right.
So she was very instrumental in pulling that together as well.
Thank you, Sal.
Teamwork. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you, and I apologize, I don't remember where we are with this, but can one of you give us an update on the pavers downtown?
Josh actually would have been the perfect question for him. I believe it is out to bid.
It is out to bid.
Is it? Okay.
I don't have the dates in front of me when we will open the bids, but, it's gonna happen.
Okay.
It's gonna happen.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, Angie, because it reminded me of something that Josh said to me in the hallway tonight before the meeting. One of the contractors asked if we're going to have a requirement for, are we going to require one lane to stay open, or can they shut that intersection down? And my response was, I felt that we could shut it down with a detour if it was like one day, one work day, and maybe we could pick the day when the brownstone is closed. I think they closed on Tuesday. So that was my response. So you might want to follow up with him.
Yes.
So we are getting close to, receiving bids, and that was one of the questions that came up from one of the bidders, so.
Okay, yeah.
Did that come
It's a
up
good
officially?
idea.
I was gonna say, we have to
Yeah, they're gonna have
clarify
to,
that, yeah, we
you'll have to
have to
notify them all.
notify everybody, so everybody's on the same, once we figure out.
Same-
that
You
yeah.
answer.
can touch base
correct.
with,
Yeah, every
when you
bidder
can touch
needs to
base
be
with Josh tomorrow on that.
notified.
Okay.
Greg, I have a question.
Mhm.
Do you know approximately when they're gonna pave, like what they marked off yesterday up on Catherine and in
I
Madison?
do not have their schedule, Matt.
That should be coming soon.
Okay.
Yeah, I did drive down, behind your house, and yeah, they're doing what they're obligated to do with what they have marked out.
Yeah, I had a neighbor ask me what that was for, and I said, it's paving, and she's like, is it gonna happen tomorrow? And I'm like, no. So,
And one of the things we talked about at our staff meetings, and Matt's gonna look into it too, is, their obligation, according to our regulations as far as paving, still may be a chunk here and a chunk there that they don't pave. And if we can get them to give us, an official quote for continue milling and possibly, the paving of those pieces, we may be able to include that while they're doing that project,
that'd be good.
rather than having those chunks, and then we gotta go back and have a mill jump around from street to street, because we had this problem 2 years ago. And we are working on trying to update this ordinance that this doesn't happen that way. So, it's,
All right.
it's a very fine line on how you can write the ordinance
Right.
to make them pave the whole street. We will, you know, as you know.
It has to be reasonable and.
It has, there has to be yes.
It's
And
amazing though to me, every town, like, just drive down 230 and it's patches everywhere.
It's
West Shore, East
ridiculous.
Shore.
It's ridiculous. There's a patch on almost every house on Oak Hill Drive in that one block. Now that's where they should be required to pave that. So, and we do have it in there, but if they do it outside the 2-year allowance, then they can get away with it. So those are the things we have to look at and see if we can come up with something that's going to really benefit the borough on this, because they're, quite frankly, they're making money off the residents and they're ruining our streets.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're working on it.
Okay.
I have one other thing.
Yes. And I get yelled at for the amount of time that I'm always up there, just so you know. Wasn't me
Normally-
tonight talking. No.
I think at the beginning of the year, maybe, I had asked about looking into, the cost of putting a fence down at Hoffer can we follow up with that at some point, just before it gets really busy for you guys? I mean, I know you're busy now, but, you know, in the summer, just
The cost to do the fence
the
from,
railroad.
on the railroad side.
Yeah, you may not have been here for that meeting.
I don't think I was here for that.
Yeah. Because I was saying, like, I've been down there several times and I've seen kids, like, crossing over, walking along it, not even just the railroad tracks, walking on the tracks in the middle.
Yeah, I'm not sure you're gonna stop that. There was a fence there at one time in the corner to keep people from the Adelia Street side coming through, and eventually that was ripped down, by kids, but it never kept them. They just went around it, or they just climbed over it. We can look at it. That railroad, I mean, if you get hit by that train, you really have to be doing something wrong. You know, it's doing 1 mile an hour and it's blowing its horn the whole way through through town. But I do understand the safety concern there. We can probably come up with some kind of price.
The quote I had received was for a 6-foot high fence, it was $27.50 a foot. For a 5-foot high fence, it's $24.25 a foot. And it is, I believe, if I recall, roughly 1,100 feet.
Okay.
30,000.
And then you have the right of way as far as the railroad. I don't know what their right of way is on
You
the
have to keep
side,
the
so
fence
it would
post
have to be
out of the roadway.
It would have to be way out of their right of way.
So to be more on this.
Yeah. So it may be down on the bank, and then then what you'll have is the weeds and all that stuff between the railroad and that fence that we normally take care of. Now we can't. But you mind getting an email out to her with that price? And,
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
I got the quote, I just zoned on bringing
All
it
right.
back to you guys.
and if that's something that you wish us to pursue further, we can talk about it, bring it up at a meeting.
You think there's just like maybe some type of shrubbery we could go along there maybe? That might be a little more.
Oh,
Aesthetic.
Briars?
Thorn bushes. No, I'm serious. Something thorny, is usually the best deterrent on a lot of things. I mean, that's an idea.
It'll cost more than the fence.
Did you say
Probably.
electric fence?
It could, yeah. Could,
Electric fence, okay.
if you did it the whole way along though, isn't there some shrubbery along there? Except for down like where you're talking?
I wouldn't call it shrubbery. There's a lot of junk on that bank.
If you're trying to make a barrier, like some of the shrubby stuff that's there is not a barrier. So there is things there, but if you want to create a barrier, you would almost have to just take out everything that's there and then replant. And then I do believe with the cost of plants and with the ongoing maintenance of trying to keep them alive and then pruning and all that sort of thing, over time, the fence would be a much cheaper option. May not look as nice, but cost-wise,
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 10, Veolia joint venture. Note that no one is in attendance. And agenda item number 11, does council have anything they wish to discuss?
I'd like to just mention one thing on behalf
Mhm.
of council. There's been some discussion about a small groundbreaking ceremony for Hopper Park Playground. We're approaching the time when Rogel will be moving in to begin the project at Hopper Park, the little Middletown, to replace Kids Castle. I'm told that probably will be sometime in June. We don't have an exact firm date, but we're at a point where we might want to give some thought to what date we want to have that groundbreaking. When I spoke to Josh, we were talking about maybe trying to time it have the groundbreaking on the day they're there to do the excavation. But they're not able to give us that date until they get a day when the equipment's going to arrive, and then they're pretty quick on it. Once they get the delivery notification, they're going to move in. That'll be all done in a short time frame. What that is problematic for me if we're going to invite people to be there.
Sure.
So we almost have to kind of guess at a date, and if they're not in there, do it without them, or do it after they're already in there digging. But so that's the only question I have at this point when we want to do that.
So Ken, if we pushed it to the very last week of June, who can really tell if they'll be there, but.
Yeah, I originally, Josh was telling me he thought they might be in like the first or second week of June. So if we pushed it to one of that date, they're probably going to be down there, I would think. But then you just don't know. You know, with supply chain now and stuff getting delivered, you're expecting it, and then it doesn't come for, you know, who knows. So. But I just wanted to get that out there. We don't have to answer it now. You can think about it and talk amongst each other and get back to me.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you. Any general?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had one thing. I'm sorry.
Thank
I just wanted to put this out there, just to, be transparent and not to surprise anyone or anything. But, so regarding the pool, I just had a couple things that, last year, we as a body made the decision to open the pool, and, in doing so, we committed to giving it another year. And I know that it wasn't an easy decision. And I think that we all knew that if things didn't change, if the pool had opened, that, that would have been, this year would have been the last year. But so I think that if anything, there was a consensus that we know that the pool was and is important to the community. And, sometimes when you lose things like that, you don't get it back. And unfortunately, as we found out this year, with the increases of everything going up, people changed their votes, and that doesn't even matter at this point. But I think that we just need to focus on where to go from here. And in saying that, I just wanted to be transparent that I have been looking at some other options, not as the pool itself, but more options as to what we can do as a borough and as a body to help the residents that don't have the means to join the swim club, because we do have those funds set back for the pool this year. I hoped to have more information tonight, but I've been reaching out and I didn't get all the answers that I was hoping to. So I just kind of wanted to put this out there that I have been looking at some things, and if something comes to fruition that is even feasible, I will be bringing it forward. So I hope that at that point, we can look at it and support if it's best for the residents or for the borough as a whole, because I think that, if nothing else, the pool is important to people in the community. Maybe not, everyone used it, but for the people that did, that can't go to the swim club, I think it's important to give them some type of an option in place of that. So that was it.
Okay, thank you. Any other council comments, thoughts? Any general public comment?
Jack Still. The Roosevelt traffic study, this is a borough. Were we required to do that, or did we just do it for the information?
We were required to do certain studies, and we'd have to do an ordinance, and that's been drafted. And so, yes, we did what we had. Well, the study was maybe more robust than what was required, but, yeah.
Well,
Jack, we weren't required to do a study, but if we're going to change traffic flow pattern or add stop signs, then you're required to do a study before you change those things.
all right,
So it
well,
was council's decision to go out and get a
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
consultant's
thought that was your
opinion
question, in order
to
to,
determine whether or not there should be some changes made.
is it dictated what type of traffic study? Because I think what the police chief said, that if you just buy 3 or 4 more of those things they put around, you'd get about 10 times more information. And could you just collect your own data and provide your data to HRG?
now, generally, there are standards out there, and HRG followed the standard.
All right.
That's what was done.
Okay. Well, that was my thought.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Any other general public comment?
Good evening.
Evening.
Pledge to all of you. Years ago, when I was in the codes office, there was a permitting process which was in place for opening the streets. Where a company would come in, cut a sizable hole in the street, and they had to buy a permit for that. So the initial thought of that permit was if the street wasn't filled back properly, there was monies available to go and fix that particular dig site properly. You're aware of that, Ken, I'm sure.
Yeah, we still have it.
Yeah, it's still,
It's still there?
that's how it operates.
We use a
yeah.
bonding process.
Right, oh, so then
Yeah, that's still
everything
what
that's
it's-
going on out there now, someone's paying for, and if the job's not done correctly, we just go do it.
Right. It's just here, for some reason, we're seeing them moving kind of slow to get back and do their final restorations. It looks like UGI is trying to finish this really long project
Before they bring a paver
before they
in.
bring another
Right.
subcon to do
I
final.
just wanted to make sure that I wasn't aware that that was still in place.
It's
yet.
still in place.
That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Follinger.
Thank you.
Seeing no more general public comment, could I have a motion, please, to adjourn the meeting to executive session to discuss litigation and personnel? We will not be returning.
So moved.
Motion by Counselor Miller, second by Counselor Kliskevich. All in favor?
Aye.